So this video is a bit different than I normally make, but I wanted to do it because I had a few really cool conversations, one with a couple family members, one with a co-worker that sort of bore out the making of it. So this is what I put together. It's a bit on birds, all about bird mythology, weird stuff. I hope you enjoy. Throughout human history, certain things have captured the collective imagination. One is the enigmatic legends of giant birds. From ancient mythology to medieval lore and even modern cryptozoology, these colossal avian beings have woven their way into the tapestry of cultural narratives, inviting speculation, fascination, and sometimes dread. The origins of giant bird legends can be traced back to some of humanity's earliest recorded histories. In Mesopotamian mythology, the Anzu bird, a mythical beast known for its immense size and strength, was said to have stolen the tablet of destiny, thus challenging the authority of the gods themselves. In ancient Indian texts, the Garuda is a colossal bird-like creature that plays a central role in Hindu mythology, depicted as the mount of the god Vishnu. The Garuda is often described as a creature of immense power, capable of bridging the gap between the divine and the earthly realms. As Europe transitioned from the medieval period into the Renaissance, the myth of giant birds continued to evolve. During this time, accounts of the extraordinary creatures began to intertwine with exploratory reports and scientific curiosity. One of the most notable examples is the tale of the roc, a legendary bird from Middle Eastern folklore, described it as so enormous that it could carry off elephants. The roc captured the imagination of writers and explorers alike. The Thunderbird is a prominent figure in Native American mythology, particularly among the indigenous peoples of North America. In many Native American cultures, it was a revered supernatural being, often depicted as a colossal bird capable of controlling the weather. The Thunderbird's wings were believed to create thunder, while its eyes flashed lightning. The Algonquin people of North America, for example, believed that the Thunderbird ruled the upper world, battling underwater spirits to maintain balance in the cosmos. The Lakota Sioux viewed the Thunderbird as a messenger of the Great Spirit, bringing rain to nourish the earth and protect humanity from evil. In 2011, Phys.org reported researchers studying a large deposit of Neanderthal bones in Italy discovered the remains of birds along with the bones, and evidence the feathers were probably used for ornamentation. The findings add evidence that our now extinct Neanderthals could have been as cultured as our own ancestors. Paleoanthropologist Marco Purasani from the University of Ferrara in Italy and colleagues were studying Neanderthal remains in the Fiumane Cave near Verona in northern Italy when they discovered the bones of birds in layers that were on the surface around 44,000 years ago. The 660 bird bones included wing bones showing evidence of scraping, peeling, and cutting by stone tools at the points of which the large flight feathers would have been attached. The feathers would have been of no culinary value, and many of the bird species are poor food sources in any case. Feathered arrows had not yet been invented, and so the feathers would have had no practical value either, which would suggest they were most likely removed for use as ornamentation or decoration. Recently, more studies have been done to back this up, and this was not the only Neanderthal site where feathers make an appearance. I find it fascinating that humans, for as long as we have studied, seem to have some connection to birds, and many of these seem similar. Most seem to involve larger birds than those we would see today or know to have existed at the time of the reports. This begs the question, are all these stories, legends, myths, and beliefs connected to something real, or are they simply symbolic, as most of the mainstream and skeptic communities will forward? Let's take a look at some sightings and reports and discuss some theories around the legends we have looked at so far. The tombstone thunderbird, pterodactyl, or sometimes flying monster is one story you will see when researching online. This comes from an April 26, 1890 edition of the Tombstone Epitaph In the paper, an interesting story arose. It reads, "A winged monster resembling a huge alligator with an extremely elongated tail and an immense pair of wings was found on the desert between the Whetstone and Huachuca Mountains last Sunday by two ranchers who were returning home from the Huachucas. The creature was evidently greatly exhausted by long flight and when discovered was able to fly but a short distance at a time. After the first shock of wild amazement had passed the two men, they were on horseback and armed with Winchester rifles, regained sufficient coverage to pursue the monster, and after an exciting chase of several miles succeeded in getting near enough to open fire with their rifles and wounding it. The creature then turned on the men, but owing to its exhausted condition they were able to keep out of its way, and after a few well-directed shots the monster partly rolled over and remained motionless. The men cautiously approached, their horses snorting with terror, and found that the creature was dead. They then proceeded to make an examination and found that it measured about 92 feet in length, and the greatest diameter was about 15 inches. The monster had only 2 feet, these being situated a short distance in front of where the wings were joined to the body. The head, as near as they could judge, was about 8 feet long, the jaws being thickly set and strong, sharp teeth. Its eyes were as large as dinner plates and protruded about halfway from the head. They had some difficulty in measuring the wings as they were partly folded under the body, but finally got one straightened out sufficiently to get a measurement of 78 feet, making the total length from tip to tip about 160 feet. The wings were composed of a thick and nearly transparent membrane that were devoid of feathers or hair, as was the entire body. The skin of the body was completely smooth and easily penetrated by a bullet. The men cut off a small portion of the tip of one wing and took it home with them. Late last night, one of them arrived in the city for supplies and to make the necessary preparations to skin the creature. When the hide will be sent east for examination by the eminent scientists of the day. The finder returned early this morning, accompanied by several prominent men who will endeavor to bring the strange creature to the city before it is mutilated. Reports today will say that a photo of the creature was included in the paper, but it seems that is impossible, as the paper was not printing photos at the time, and no photos ever been found, although many hoax photos have been passed around the internet. Regardless of a photo existing, the report does and is quite interesting. The report, if genuine, is simply an Old West accounting of a giant flying creature that was killed. The photo existing or not does not really change that. So first, is it a Thunderbird like many claim? Well, no. The description says the animal had leather-like skin and was devoid of feathers, something that sets it apart from most versions of the Thunderbird. It is also reported to be gator-like, something that makes me think of a pterodactyl or some other flying dinosaur creature, not a Thunderbird. The teeth and the lack of thunderous sound from the bird also set it apart. The fact that the men claim to have killed the animal begs a few questions, though. Why has no evidence of the animal's skin or bones been found? Did the men send them to anyone? Those are things we'll never know. There was no follow-up story, no part 2. It may be because the whole story was fabricated. That is not anything new. Old West papers did make up stories to drum up attention. It would appear back then the media was not better than it is today. Tombstone was not in the best shape in 1890, with people traveling to the town at all-time lows. The paper would have had an interest in seeing a story create attention. I will say in the case of the Tombstone story, I think this is the case. I think the creature was quite literally created by the very people who wrote that story. Some reporter looking to make Tombstone relevant again. I do not think they would have guessed this tale would still be told today. Let's take a look at some cases I find interesting I was able to dig up. Back in 2002, the Alaska Daily News reported on a sighting. The newspaper quoted residents in the village of Togiak and Mounatogak as saying the creature, like something out of the movie Jurassic Park, had a wingspan of 14 feet, making it the size of an airplane. At first I thought it was one of those old-time otter planes. The paper quoted Moses Kopchiak, 43, a heavy equipment operator from Togiak, as saying, "Instead of continuing toward me, it banked to the left, and that's when I noticed it wasn't a plane." The Daily News, the largest daily newspaper in Alaska, said scientists had no doubt that people in the region west of Dillingham had seen the winged creature, but they were skeptical about its reported size. "I'm certainly not aware of anything with a 14-foot wingspan that's been alive for the last 100,000 years, the paper quoted raptor specialist Phil Schimpf as saying. Kupchiak said the bird disappeared over the hill, and he then radioed Togiak residents to tell them to keep their children in. Another local resident, a pilot who had initially dismissed the reports, said he recently saw the bird from a distance of just 1,000 feet while flying his airplane. "The people in the plane saw him," John Boker quoted as saying. He's huge, he's really, really big. You wouldn't want to have your children out." Schimpf and Rob McDonald of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said there have been several sightings over the past year and a half of Steller's eagles, a fish-eating bird that can weigh 20 pounds and have a wingspan of 8 feet. Another sighting report from the paper comes from 2018, again in Alaska. Tabitha Bauer made a post on Facebook. "Attention, I was just driving by the movie theater in the valley and there was a huge black bird flying above the road. The wingspan had to be at least 20 feet. It was almost as wide as the road. I have lived here all my life and have never seen anything like that. It freaked me out. It was not a raven or an eagle. This isn't a joke. This thing was huge, almost the size of a small airplane. Did anyone else see it?" In a report from the Juneau Empire, they expand on the story. The sighting was backed up by several others in a long comment thread on the post. Some were poking fun at the idea of a thunderbird or pterodactyl in the valley, but others weren't so skeptical. Bauer, recounting the sighting to the Empire a few days after spotting the bird, said it was like an eagle but 5 times as big. She couldn't think of any other way to describe the odd encounter. She spotted it around 4 p.m. on January 16th. What would have been dusk. Bauer was driving to the bank alone in her car. "Right before the movie theater, I looked ahead of me and it was towards Super Bear direction," Bauer said, referencing the grocery store in the Mendenhall Mall and Gross Alaska Theater's Glacier Cinema. There was rain on her windshield, so she turned on her wipers to clear the view. That was when she saw a massive jet black bird with a short tail flying level to the treetops over Mendenhall Loop Road toward her. Bauer said the bird flapped its wings, soared a little higher, and flew at a fast clip over her car about 50 feet in the air. I looked up, and right at that point there was a gigantic huge black bird flying right above my truck. It was basically following the roadway along the treetops. I slowed down to try to take a better look at it. It was heading towards the glacier. The wingspan was almost as wide as the road," Bauer said, adding it was the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. "It was very concerning. I've never seen anything like that." Bauer said it definitely had feathers, but she couldn't make out a beak. "The body of it itself had to have been 6 to 8 feet, Bauer said. "I know it sounds nuts. I've been getting a lot of crap on Facebook about it, like I'm crazy, but I wanted to post in case anyone else had seen it." Another woman who asked that the Empire only use her first name, Diane, said that she saw something very similar, this time perched or attempting to perch in a tree near her house late at night a few years ago. These are some similar sightings that all happened in Alaska, a place that is deeply connected to the Alaska Native stories of the Thunderbird. Many birds have been put forward as possible candidates to describe the sightings that have happened in Alaska, but none quite reached the size or overall look of the bird spotted. One story I came across online involves another state and much earlier date. Alton, Illinois has become an interesting place in the history of giant bird sightings. According to Loren Coleman in his book Curious Encounters, on April 4th, Walter F. Sigmund, a former Army colonel, reported seeing a massive bird in the sky above Alton. He was conversing with a local farmer and Colonel Ralph Jackson, head of the Western Military Academy at the time. "I thought there was something wrong with my eyesight," Sigmund stated, "but it was definitely a bird and not a glider or jet plane. It appeared to be flying northeast from the movement of the object and its size. I figured it could only be a bird of tremendous size." A few days later, Robert Price, a farmer from Caledonia, observed the same or a similar bird, describing it as a monster bird bigger than an airplane. On April 10th, another sighting occurred in Overland. A large bird was spotted by Mr. and Mrs. Clyde Smith and Les Bacon, who initially thought it was an airplane until it began flapping its wings vigorously. On April 24th, the bird was spotted again in Alton by E.M. Coleman and his son James. Coleman later described it as an enormous, incredible thing with a body that looked like a naval torpedo. He noted that it was flying at about 500 feet and cast a shadow as large as a Piper cub at that altitude. Finally, on May 5th, the bird was seen for the last time in Alton. Arthur Davidson reported the sighting to police that evening. Later that night, Mrs. William Stallings of St. Louis also reported seeing the bird, describing it as bright, about as big as a house. Despite a number of subsequent sightings in the St. Louis area, the sightings abruptly ceased, just as public interest in the bird peaked. Illinois is full of stories of giant birds. One from 1977 is the Lowe's family. At 8:30 p.m. on July 25, 1977, two huge birds suddenly attacked a 10-year-old boy in a backyard in Lawndale. One of the birds grabbed the boy and started to lift him into the air. The boy's mother quickly began hitting the bird until it let go of her son. Depending on the source, the boy is said to have weighed either 50, 56, or 65 pounds. No matter which weight is correct, it's clear that lifting such a heavy load would be difficult for any bird. Sightings are reported in Illinois to this day, and really these sightings happen all over the U.S. constantly. It's much like the UFO phenomena. If you believe, much of your belief is based on witness accounts, and that's not always the best. Texas has a fair share of giant bird sightings as well. In February 1976, two teachers from San Antonio's Southside School District were driving on a lonely road in separate cars. They both saw what appeared to be enormous birds with bony structures and wingspans of 15 to 20 feet. One teacher thought they looked like pteranodons, extinct flying reptiles from 160 million years ago. The San Antonio Evening News covered the sighting, and a reporter contacted Louis D. Zapato, the director of the San Antonio Zoo, to ask about the pteranodon claims. "There's nothing in today's Texas that would be that. I know of nothing that looks like that, but I sure would like two of them for the zoo," D. Zapato said. Sightings of giant birds go back a long time in Texas and are still rolling in to this day. So what's the deal with giant birds? Are these some long-lost species, some mythical, legendary creature, or just people sharing imaginations and exaggerations? I think I have a reasonable answer. It's a little of everything. I think humans are obsessed with what comes from above. Not only is this evident in the alien UFO phenomena, but just about any religion or spiritual group you take a look at. Humans are interested in the sky and what comes from above. I started this video speaking about many historical points to back that up. From natives to medieval Europeans, giant bird legends found themselves prominent. Things that fly are hard to view correctly. It's difficult to know how big something really is. That being said, humans are used to seeing birds. We know how big they are and what to expect. If people see something big enough to take note of and report to people about it, I feel that it was probably pretty big. Birds in general are held in high regard by most native groups. In my home of Alaska, the raven takes on many stories and beliefs. Regardless of the size, birds have been figures of notable worship, beliefs, cultural stories, and have been seen as much more than ideas or concepts, but real living creatures and mythical beings. The point I'm making is birds are something humans have always been interested in throughout history and throughout faith. This should tell us something. Birds are special. We might not know why, or if giant thunderbirds are flying around today, but we do know birds have been held to some high degree by just about every group of humans I can think of. And that has to count for something. I find it very interesting that most of these people all seem to have their very own bird legends, and they all share some similar characteristics. So little of Alaska is explored, and I will assume that the same is true for many other large states. Who's to say what is out there living or beneath the dirt waiting to be found in fossil or bone form? I'm always amazed by how fast people are to write off sightings of long extinct animals or weird creatures. So much of our planet's unexplored. We truly do not know what's out there. We often run on assumptions or guesses that can create tunnel vision. One reason for humans' fascination with giant birds may be explained by the theory that ancient cultures might have encountered advanced technology or beings that they are interpreting through lens of their own experiences and beliefs. The awe-inspiring, godlike attributes ascribed to giant birds could be the result of witnessing phenomena beyond their understanding, perhaps even encounters with alien craft or beings. Another angle is the possibility of a collective human experience with extraterrestrial life, encoded into mythology. If advanced beings visited Earth in the past, it's conceivable their appearance and technology would be mythologized into the giant supernatural creatures found in ancient lore. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this little run down a rabbit hole. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know something you'd like to hear about in the next one. Peace.